Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss a further analysis of the economic outlook for the UK, which has produced a chart which is quite spectacular in laying bare the withering impacts of Brexit on our economy. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So I've talked on several occasions in the last year about how the latest economic data, whenever it comes out, always shows that in 2021, other countries' economies bounced back from the coronavirus-fueled devastation of 2020, but that this was not the case in the UK. Actually, not entirely true. I said that Britain had not bounced back. In fact, I referenced a chart a few times which showed that Northern Ireland's economy did bounce back. In Britain, London and Wales, with their Labour executive, didn't do too badly at all. They were also close. But the UK as a whole, still suffering. And why would this be? What on earth happened that meant that the UK bucked the trend of the rest of the world and failed to recover in 2021? I mean, the government keep blaming COVID for our economic problems, and this year they're blaming the war in Europe, even though that's a few weeks old. But other countries have these problems to contend with as well. In fact, there are countries in Europe where the issues with Russia will hit them harder than here in the UK. But now we have a new chart with updated information, again in the Financial Times. It shows three lines. The dark blue line is the world and shows goods. It is goods exports, how they've been doing. Big old drop in early 2020, obviously. COVID shut down a lot of economies. Production in China, the world's factory, suffered a major downturn. Then it started to recover in late 2020, and the recovery was complete sometime in 2021. The world's economy of goods exports is now above the level when COVID hit. The pink line are the advanced economies. Now, these are the countries which are more comparable to the UK, obviously, hit harder and taking longer to recover, because advanced economies are more sensitive to global trade issues. They are more dependent upon exports. But the pattern was the same. Big old drop followed by an equally rapid recovery later on. As with the world as a whole, advanced economies as a collective are above the level they were at the start of the pandemic. Then the light blue line singles out the UK. Again, big old drop, follows the same pattern. In fact, not having a line specifically for the G7 flatters us. If they'd have put a separate one in just for the G7, that would have made us look worse. Because if they had, it would have shown that the UK fell below the level of the rest of the G7 nations, which are most directly comparable. The pink line shows all advanced economies. So you can see our drop is it's roughly in line with where the average was, but it's only slightly above. So the average for the advanced economies has dropped slightly below the UK even. But the recovery never happened. We started to get a recovery much later than the rest of the world, but it stalled towards the end of 2020 as the government tried, not for the first time, for their herd immunity nonsense and ignored advice to control the spread of the virus. We suffered another big drop. But hang on a minute. Look at these other lines. Everyone else is going upwards. It's recovering. We suffered another drop, going much lower this time than the average of those advanced economies. Then we eased off the lockdown. We saw a bit of recovery again. Not a recovery that got us anywhere near our pre-COVID levels, of course. And the peak was only actually in line with the average trough of the world in general. But it was a sort of recovery. It was going in the right direction. Then it fell again in summer. Now, why would this be? It wasn't COVID this time, though Boris Johnson letting Delta into the country didn't help. Staff absences due to COVID were a problem, but that was a problem shared by other countries as well. Remember, we cannot dismiss the problems as COVID when COVID is global. If the impact is not global, what we're looking at here is an impact that's not global. It's like the global impact is, recovery. The UK impact is, no, we keep going down. So we have to find something that accounts for why the UK alone is not following this global pattern. And a big part of it was because Brexit trade barriers were starting to bite. Farmers couldn't get the workers to harvest their crops, We stockpiled ahead of Brexit. Those stockpiles were running low. There weren't enough butchers to deal with the meat. There weren't enough drivers throughout the supply chain. Towards the end of the year, the government were forced to issue more visas for foreign workers, something they were asked to do many months earlier. Then you can see the boost in exports again as we approach Christmas. And again, you'd expect exports to be boosted heading up to Christmas with or without Brexit. But now it's heading down again. And here's the thing. If you just had the light blue line on its own, if you didn't have the others, you'd say two things. First, you would say that our goods export trade has nowhere near recovered to pre-COVID levels. Sure enough, our economy is largely services, not goods, but the government keep insisting that we're back above pre-COVID levels. We're not for either goods or services, but this graph shows it very, very clearly for goods. A long way off. But the second thing would be, you might easily think that COVID is still taking its toll, and the recent downturn is Putin's campaign in Ukraine. You could easily, if you just had that light blue line, someone who wished to push for Brexit could convince other people that actually it was down to these other issues. But the thing is, we do have the other lines. We can see that what is happening to the UK is not what's happening around the world. At the same time that we are on a downward trajectory, again, having never, when we've peaked, got anywhere near our pre-COVID levels of goods exports, the rest of the world, and even the collective advanced economies, are on an upturn in exports. They're not just above pre-COVID, they're still going up. The world is becoming more productive. It has exceeded the productivity of pre-COVID times. It's only the UK that is lagging behind, and it's lagging behind a lot. It's not global pressures, because the thing about global pressures is, well, they're global. I suppose it's why they call them global pressures. Global factors have global impacts. The COVID pandemic was a global pressure on trade. It caused the world's exports in goods to sink like a stone. Since then, the world has recovered. We have not. So the overriding factor is not global, it's internal. We raised trade barriers. We actively made it harder to export our goods. Because it's not even just a case of looking at this graph and going, well, I hypothesize that this is caused by Brexit. Well, you have to demonstrate your link between cause and effect. The link between cause and effect is clear. First, we created hard trade borders between ourselves and our main export market. Undeniable. This means we have to fill in way more paperwork. That's stated fact. Pay fees. Fact. Have higher transport costs. Fact. More checks. Fact. And so on. None of these things are speculation. We know we have all these things. And you think to yourself, so if to export something now, you have to fill in a load more paperwork. And that takes you longer. So it takes a lot longer for you to be able to get your stuff onto the lorry. Then the driver of the lorry, or the company they work for, has to sort out various codes to be able to get through the border. They've got to get their stuff sorted out. They're going to charge a lot more because it's going to cost them delays. There's fewer drivers, all the rest of it. So more time to do things, more cost to do things. How could you possibly say that it's possible to export on the same terms as before? It's not. The consequences of it is that the goods bound for export to the EU face more delays, higher costs, in some cases actually can't be exported at all. Second, we tried to increase our exports around the rest of the world at a time when the cost of transport was increasing. See, fuel costs were going up long before Putin made the mistake of his life. And we've been coping with a global shortage of shipping containers. If you are based in Britain and your business model involves exporting, it is now harder to do it than it was before Brexit. And it doesn't matter where you try and export to. The higher trade barriers may vary according to market, but they are all higher in some way or other. Even if it is just as simple as costs you more now to transport things across a whole ocean or two. And I cannot tell you how much it hurts my brain to see that we've made it harder to export goods, and that is fact. And then listen to airheads in government or on KGB News telling us that doing this would lead to a boost in exports. Of course it couldn't. It never could. Don't give me that crap about free trade agreements or sovereignty. We have made it harder to export. End of story. Northern Ireland was able to recover because the Northern Ireland Protocol allowed it to carry on exporting freely once Brexit was inflicted upon the rest of us. And I appreciate that most of the general population won't understand the nature of the trade barriers that Brexit has brought. I also appreciate that people won't generally be seeing these international comparisons. In both cases, it's because the mainstream media are not talking about them. The Financial Times is actually a bit of a wonder in that it's a Tory-supported newspaper that's been quite frank about the impacts of Brexit on trade. But it does not have a very wide readership. It's aimed at those who can profit even from economic decline in the country. So it's not going to be a major force for changing people's minds on Brexit. So it can talk the truth in these matters. It's not going to change a lot. But you won't see charts like this in the Mail or the Sun or the Express or the Telegraph. I could go on. I mean, I seriously doubt you'd see much of a mention on the BBC, though Ross Atkins does sometimes do something similar. And I would love for some organisations, pro-European organisations, to just think, do you know what? Every few months, what we need to do every few months is just leaflet, target areas at least. It would cost a lot of money to leaflet the whole country. I actually looked it up, about 1.6 million quid. But, if you targeted areas, marginal constituencies for the next election, that'd be interesting. With leaflets that showed this, and again, no wall of text, showed the chart and the caption, Brexit isn't working. Shove it through every letterbox in every marginal constituency. And every time there's new data, as I say, every few months, every quarter, there's usually something. Do something similar. A nice simple chart comparing the UK with the rest of the world. Maybe even stick a big old arrow. I haven't done that, but stick a big old arrow saying when Brexit was, just for the avoidance of doubt. And the thing is, at some point, we will get back up to pre-COVID levels. But you can see here, not only is it going to take a very long time, and even then, we will still be well behind the rest of the world because the rest of the world is still becoming more productive. We'll still be lagging behind. Brexit is a permanent drag on our ability to trade. The Office for Budgetary Responsibility say a 4% cost to our GDP for the next 15 years. Maybe they're hoping that in 15 years we get, we've realigned. I think we'll have to. It's absolutely essential. Absolutely essential. Because otherwise we'll never recover from this. We'll never recover until it's reversed. And the longer it takes to reverse, the longer it will take to recover. Because we're walking down the wrong path. As soon as you stop and decide you're walking down the wrong path and have to go the other way, it takes you a lot longer to get back to where you were before. It's really that simple. Oh, and bear in mind that at the same time as we made it harder to export, we also made it harder to import. The young uns went out yesterday. They tried to go to KFC. There's a load of things that weren't available. Then they went to McDonald's. There was still a load of things not available, but they went, you know what, we'll just get what they've got. Now, I don't know. That could have just been a little blip in the KFC and the McDonald's in Scunthorpe. I don't know. But I did think to myself, are we going to start suffering a few more shortages now? Because not only have we made it harder to import and therefore get more goods, but our main ferry company has also decided that it can do without its staff, which, as it turns out, does sort of put a bit of a barrier on getting ferries to and from the continent as well. And we are an island. So at the same time as we're making less money as a country, we're forcing ourselves to pay more for goods and sometimes having greater difficulty getting those goods due to exactly the same Brexit or Brexit mindset. But hey, people like inflation, right? But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.